This video should simplify your world a lot and should give you some very important information just to help you get clarity around what you should focus on and compare it to what your company focuses on. What I'm going to talk you through today is the concept of KPIs, key performance indicators. So I'm going to explain to you what they are, KPIs that your companies are thinking about that will surprise you, and then more importantly, KPIs that you should consider. Then I'm going to wrap up by helping you understand how to focus on the right KPIs, in which order, so you're not trying to overwhelm yourself and try to boil the ocean. So I'm going to share my screen and I'm going to walk you through this step by step. So the first thing to understand is the definition of a key performance indicator. So according to Gardner, KPIs, also known as key performance indicators, metrics that help sales teams measure their effectiveness and efficiency with the overall goal of improving methodologies and processes to drive sales. So the whole goal of what key performance indicators do is they are an indicator of performance, just like the name suggests. So these data points really help you and the sales organization really get a sense of whether or not you're on track or not, so that you can adjust accordingly. And the way I want you to think about your business is think about it like an assembly line. Every aspect of the assembly line has its different piece of the puzzle to help come out with the finished product. Same thing goes through sales. Same thing goes through building a sales organization, right? So as a rep and as a company, the whole goal of having KPIs is helping to provide clarity on the most important areas of the business so that you can improve as quickly as possible. But there's a key difference between what companies care about and what sales reps should care about, like you, every day. And that's what I'm going to share with you. So first thing I want to talk about is top sales team KPIs. What are they thinking about that you may be surprised by? And I know this because I was a chief revenue officer and I scaled multiple companies over the years. So I'm going to quickly cover the metrics and what they mean. So number one is annual contract value. 2, customer lifetime value. 3, new leads in the pipeline. 4, win rate. 5, rep retention. 6, average rep ramp time. And 7, customer retention. So what does each of these mean? ACV is the average sales amount that a customer pays over a year. So another way to think about it is average deal size. Customer lifetime value measures every dollar that we get from a customer through the entire relationship of that customer. So this isn't just new business deals. This is upsells, cross-sells, renewals. If you're on an annual contract and they renew for 5 years before they cancel, that means whatever the total dollar amount that they spend, that's the total lifetime value. New leads in the pipeline, this is a big indicator of your pipe gen for the organization. So the number of new leads added to each rep's pipeline during a single quarter, month, year, whatever it is. Win rate. This is the conversion rate of qualified deals in the pipeline. This helps organizations get a sense of how effective the different reps are at running deals in their business. Some businesses measure this win rate against qualified pipeline, committed pipeline. Some organizations measure it against any deal in the pipeline, right? So it's important to know how your company measures it, just so it can be aligned with them. Rep retention. This is a big surprise to a lot of sales reps that I speak to. As a chief revenue officer, it's a commonly known statistic, especially in the US startup community, that on average every year between 30 to 40% of your sales organization is going to turn over. And turnover doesn't automatically mean that you get fired. Attrition stems from a couple of things. Being promoted to a different role, that's attrition because you're no longer in your current role. Of course, if you leave the company and go somewhere else voluntarily, that's attrition. And then of course, if you're not performing and get let go. So this is something that the top sales teams are really thinking about and being proactive about, because they're building that into the model. And this is one of the big things that surprise reps is how much companies are not surprised when there is attrition, and they're not surprised because they bake it into the model. So that's rep retention. Next is average rep ramp time. So this is basically the amount of time it takes from your day one on the job to you going live and talking to customers. That's how I measure it. That's how a lot of sales teams measure it. Other people look at ramp time as how long is it from the day one that you start to you close your first deal. Other companies measure it as day one to start to when you become fully productive, AKA hitting your quota. So this is what I want you to think about, because your companies are looking at how long does it take you to ramp and in comparison to the average of your company. And then last but not least is customer retention, because it's one thing to drive sales, but what ultimately matters is driving revenue. And if you're not retaining the sales that you close, then that's a problem. So companies should be measuring, the percentage of the customers who continue to stay with you, continue to buy more products and services, renew year over year, quarter over quarter, so that they stay with you. Because that's going to help you understand, how healthy the organization is. So those are the top sales team KPIs for you to consider. But there's key differences between what a team is thinking about and what you should be thinking about to help you be focused on the right things. Because some of these, quite frankly, if you spend any time thinking about them, it's just a distraction. It's just noise for you. So that's what I want you to think about for you. So your top sales KPIs for you to think about for your business is quota attainment, qualified pipeline coverage, qualified ops in the pipeline, new ops in the pipeline, and then last but not least, total activity. So what do each of these things mean? What quota attainment? It's essentially how you stand against your quota as a percentage. If your quota is $1 million and you've closed $700,000 for the year, you're at 70% quota attainment. So it's important to know where you stand against your quota. And when another way to think about quota is this is what's expected of you, right? So that's number one. Qualified pipeline coverage. This is how much qualified pipeline you have against your quota, displayed as a multiple against your goal for the time period. Very important, the second part, because it's not just about how much pipeline you have, it's how much pipeline you have that is set to close in this time period. Because when you think about your quotas, they're usually on a very specific time period, whether it's monthly, quarterly, or annual. So if you think about that, you want to be looking at, all right, if my quota for Q4 is 500K, but my annual quota is 2 million, I'm really focused on Q4 right now. So if my quota for Q4 is 500K, but my pipeline is 1 million that's set to close in Q4, keyword, it has to be set to close in Q4. If it's set to close in Q1 or Q2, doesn't count. But if it's set to close in Q4, then I have 2x pipeline coverage. And a general rule of thumb is you always want to be at 2.5, 3x and above of qualified pipeline coverage. Anything less than that, you definitely have a lot of work to do to reduce the risk of you missing your goal. Qualified ops in the pipeline. So this isn't set against a specific time period. This is just the total number of qualified ops that you have in your pipeline, because this is a great indicator to you of the health of your pipeline. So you looking at this on an ongoing basis can be really important, because it helps you understand how much you're working with. One of my favorite phrases in sales is a fat pipeline cures all problems. So if you have a pipeline that is massive, that's going to reduce a lot of stress, a lot of anxiety, because it's going to significantly increase your chances of getting to your goal. Now, does that mean you take your foot off the gas in terms of pipe gen? Absolutely not. But it's important to know where you stand in terms of total number of ops in your pipeline. Now, new ops in the pipeline. The difference here is this is specifically related to your pipe gen, how effective you are at pipeline generation. So new ops in your pipeline. Now, notice how I didn't say qualified ops, because you want to get new ops before they become qualified. So I want you to think about is on a monthly basis, how many new opportunities am I adding to the pipeline? You don't want to look at this, on a quarterly or annual. From my experience, tighter timeframes help you hold yourself accountable. So on a monthly basis or even a weekly basis, how many at-bats are you setting up for yourself to potentially turn into qualified ops in your pipeline? Great indicator of how you're doing in terms of your progress. And then last but not least is activity. This is just total amount of meaningful activity in a given time period. Key word is meaningful, because you don't want to do activity just for activity's sake. You want to make sure your activity is meaningful. Here's what I mean by this. Commenting on someone's LinkedIn post may not be a meaningful activity. Can it help? Maybe, man, but it may not be as meaningful as you making a cold call, right? So I want you to think about it, like, what's the most meaningful activity, aka what's the activity that's going to move the needle the most for you, you're building and or progressing pipeline on a daily basis. And that's what you should be measuring. Okay. Now that we outlined the top sales reps KPIs, I want to give you a mindset of like how you should think about and prioritize your KPIs. Now, and when you think about this pyramid, there's a reason for this, because just like any pyramid, there's foundations and there's levels to it. What I want you to think about is you want to nail the layer on the bottom before you move it to the second layer, to the third layer, and so on. So the first thing we have to nail is we have to nail activity. Everything starts and stops with meaningful activity. And what I always tell reps is if you're not controlling your activity, which is 100% in your control, there's not much else to discuss, because that's just pure inputs, and inputs drive outputs. Without the inputs, there can be no outputs by definition. So you have to make sure you're hitting the expectations and exceeding them for what's outlined in your organization. Most organizations outline an activity goal that you should have on your daily, weekly, monthly basis. You should be exceeding that. Your manager should never have to come to you and ask you about your activity. Never. Number two, new ops in the pipeline. When you're consistently hitting and exceeding the activity expectations, this is when you start to look at, all right, how is my activity translating into pipeline and at bats? So getting effective at creating the at bats, by improving your outreach effectiveness, that your messaging, that your channels, how you're doing cold calls, subject lines, call to action, all of the above, right? This is how you turn your activity into at bats, as I like to call, because the more at bats you have, the more qualified ops and that you can have to work. So qualified ops in the pipeline. Once you get consistent at creating enough at bats of yourself, this is where you start to shift your focus and energy on improving how you turn those first conversations, those at bats, as I like to call it, into qualified real opportunities in your pipeline. Now, keep in mind, what I'm saying here is shift your focus and energy in improving this skill. This doesn't mean you're taking your foot off the gas in activity. This doesn't mean you're taking the foot off the gas of getting new ops in the pipeline, but you only have so much energy to improve so much at once. So you want to focus your energy on the thing that's going to move the needle the most. It comes down to leverage. So qualified ops in the pipeline is the next point of leverage to set yourself up for success. And then after you do that, this is when you start to work on turning your qualified ops into qualified pipeline coverage. Remember, qualified ops is just total qualified ops in your pipeline. Pipeline coverage is specific to the time period that you're trying to hit your goal. And that comes down to really improving how you do deal execution. This is how you're creating urgency, how you run demos, how you multi-thread, how you navigate multiple stakeholders, how you negotiate. All of those things help you better understand and translate qualified ops into qualified pipe that's set to close in the given time period. And then for last but not least is learning how to translate that qualified pipe coverage into deals across the finish line. I don't want you to put much energy into you paying attention to your quota attainment percentage on the dashboard. What I want you to put your energy into is getting deals across the finish line, right? Because it doesn't matter if someone gets to the 5-yard line. What matters is they get in the end zone. So think about your pipeline coverage and learning the skills to turn your qualified ops that are set to close and working through the hurdles, the objections, the fire drills that are going to come up, know how to navigate those effectively and proactively thinking many moves ahead. I did a video separately around thinking like a grand chess master, and which is a skill that's really powerful in sales because it helps you think many moves ahead. And this is a skill that could be applied here to help you turn qualified pipe into quota attainment. So hope this is helpful. My name is Justin J. Johnson, founder and creator of the Beautiful Savage Sales Academy. If you have any questions, feel free to shoot me a note, but use this, implement it, burn it down,